The year is 1939. The place is the Kollaa River, deep in the frozen forests of eastern Finland. The temperature has dropped to minus 40 degrees Celsius, 40 below zero. The snow is so deep that a man can disappear in it. The wind howls across the open fields, carrying ice crystals that cut like broken glass. The sun barely rises. The days are only a few hours of grey twilight. This is the worst winter in recorded Finnish history, and it is here that the Red Army of the Soviet Union has invaded. Stalin wants Finland. He has sent nearly 1 million soldiers, thousands of tanks, and countless aircraft. The Finnish army has a fraction of those numbers. No tanks, almost no aircraft, and barely enough rifles. Every military analyst predicts that Finland will fall in 2 weeks. But the analysts have not accounted for the forest. They have not accounted for the cold, and they have not accounted for one man, a small, unassuming farmer from the countryside, who wears a simple white snowsuit, carries a bolt-action rifle without a scope, and has been hunting elk in this wilderness since he was a boy. His name is Simo Häyhä. He is 34 years old. He is 5 feet 3 inches tall, barely 5'3". He does not look like a warrior. He looks like a man you would pass on a country road without a second glance. But over the next 100 days, Simo Häyhä will become the deadliest sniper in the history of warfare. He will kill over 500 Soviet soldiers. Some say 505, some say 542, some say even more. That is not a typo. 500. In 100 days. An average of 5 kills per day, every day, in the frozen hell of the Winter War. The Soviets will give him a name, Bílá Smrt, the White Death. They will send counter-snipers, artillery barrages, and even airstrikes to kill him. They will fail. He will be shot in the face, an explosive bullet that tears open his jaw and shatters his skull, and he will survive. He will wake up on Christmas Day 1940 in a hospital bed and ask, "What happened to my rifle?" This is the story of Simo Häyhä, the White Death, the man who killed over 500 enemy soldiers and never once used a scope, the man who became a legend not because he wanted glory, but because he was defending his home. To understand Simo Häyhä, you must first understand the war that made him. The Winter War began on November 30th, 1939, when the Soviet Union invaded Finland. Stalin believed that Finland was part of Russia's historical sphere of influence. He wanted to push the border back from Leningrad, modern St. Petersburg, to create a buffer zone. He expected a quick victory. The Red Army had over 450,000 soldiers in the initial invasion force, with thousands more in reserve. The Finnish army had about 180,000 soldiers total, poorly equipped, poorly supplied, and vastly outnumbered. The Finns had almost no tanks, almost no aircraft, and barely enough ammunition. Their uniforms were inadequate for the winter. Their rifles were often decades old. But the Finns had 2 advantages, the land and the cold. The Finnish winter is not like a Canadian winter or a Russian winter. It is wet, dark, and brutally cold. The temperature in the Kollaa region dropped to minus 43 degrees Celsius. At that temperature, metal sticks to bare skin, oil turns to jelly, weapons freeze. Men who stop moving for more than a few minutes die of hypothermia. The Soviets, many of whom came from the warmer regions of the Soviet Union, were not prepared. Their tanks froze in place, their trucks would not start, their soldiers, wearing inadequate winter gear, froze to death by the thousands. The Finns, by contrast, had been born in this cold. They knew how to dress in layers. They knew how to build fires without creating smoke. They knew how to move on skis across the deep snow, something the Soviets could not do. The Finns moved like ghosts. They appeared from the forest, fired, and vanished. They cut Soviet supply lines, ambushed convoys, and destroyed entire regiments. The Soviets called it the Forest War. They were terrified of the forest. And the most terrifying thing in the forest was Simo Häyhä. Simo Häyhä was not a professional soldier. He was a farmer and a hunter. He had grown up in the rural village of Rautjärvi, near the border with Russia. He spent his childhood hunting elk, birds, and small game in the dense Finnish forests. He knew how to track, how to camouflage himself, how to lie motionless for hours in the snow. He knew how to judge distance, wind, and temperature, all the variables that affect a bullet's flight. And he knew his rifle. Häyhä used a standard Finnish version of the Soviet Mosin Nagant rifle, the M28-30. It was a bolt-action rifle with iron sights, no scope. Häyhä refused to use a scope for several reasons. First, a scope requires the sniper to raise his head higher, making him a target. Second, a scope can fog up in the cold. Third, a scope reflects light which can give away the sniper's position. Fourth, Häyhä simply preferred iron sights. He had used them his entire life. He could hit a target at 150 yards with iron sights faster and more accurately than most men could with a scope. He also carried a submachine gun, a Suomi KP/31 for close quarters fighting. But his rifle was his primary weapon, and he was extraordinary with it. The tactics of Simo Häyhä were simple, disciplined, and brutally effective. He would leave his unit's camp before dawn, skiing deep into the forest. He would find a firing position overlooking a Soviet supply road, a camp, or a defensive position. He would then build a snow wall in front of him, a simple pile of packed snow that would stop a bullet. He would pack snow around his body, hiding his silhouette. He would put snow in his mouth to prevent his breath from steaming. He would wear his white snowsuit, a simple overcoat and pants, and stay completely still. He would wait. Sometimes he would wait for hours. Sometimes he would wait all day. The Soviets would move. Häyhä would fire. One shot, one kill. He never fired a second shot from the same position, if he could avoid it. He would then move, sometimes crawling, sometimes skiing, to a new position. He would wait again. He would fire again. He never used a spotter. He never used a radio. He worked alone. By the end of the war, he had over 500 confirmed kills, the highest confirmed sniper kill count in any major war. And those are only the confirmed kills. The actual number may be higher. To put that in perspective, 500 men, 500 families who lost a father, a son, a brother, 500 lives ended by a small farmer from Rautjärvi who never wanted to be a soldier. The Soviets tried everything to kill him. They sent their own snipers. Häyhä killed them. They sent artillery. Häyhä survived. They sent airstrikes. Häyhä survived. On March 6, 1940, they finally got lucky. A Soviet sniper, or possibly an explosive bullet from a machine gun, struck Häyhä in the lower left jaw. The bullet was an explosive round, designed to fragment on impact. It tore through his jaw, shattered his skull, and exited through his left cheek. He collapsed in the snow. His comrades found him unconscious and bleeding profusely. They carried him to a field hospital. He was declared dead. Then he twitched. They rushed him to a more advanced hospital. He underwent multiple surgeries. His jaw was reconstructed using bone grafts from his hip. He was in a coma for over a week. He woke up on March 13th, 1940, the day the war ended. His first words were, "What happened to my rifle?" He had to learn to eat again, to speak again, to live again. He was permanently disfigured. His left cheek was sunken, his jaw was crooked, but he was alive. And he had over 500 kills. The Winter War ended on March 13th, 1940. Finland ceded territory to the Soviet Union, including the region where Häyhä had fought, but remained independent. The Red Army, which had been expected to conquer Finland in 2 weeks, had been humiliated. It had lost over 126,000 dead and 264,000 wounded, a total of nearly 400,000 casualties. The Finns had lost about 26,000 dead. The disparity is staggering. The Winter War is a testament to what a determined, well-led and well-motivated army can do against a larger, better equipped, but poorly prepared enemy. And Simo Häyhä is the ultimate symbol of that victory. After the war, Häyhä returned to farming. He never spoke publicly about his wartime experiences unless asked. He did not write a memoir. He did not give interviews for money. He lived a quiet, simple life, raising cattle, hunting, and caring for his dogs. He was promoted several times, from corporal to second lieutenant, an extraordinary jump for a man who had started the war as a private. He received the Mannerheim Cross, Finland's highest military decoration, on August 28, 1940. He was also awarded the honorary rifle of the Finnish army. He rarely wore his medals. He died on April 1, 2002, at the age of 96. He is buried in Ruokolahti, Finland, in a simple grave marked with a small stone. His name is carved alongside his wartime rank and the dates of his birth and death. No mention of his kills, no mention of his legend. But the legend lives on. So what can we learn from Simo Häyhä? First, that skill matters more than equipment. Häyhä used a bolt-action rifle with iron sights, a weapon that would be considered obsolete by any modern military. But he knew that rifle better than anyone. He had fired it tens of thousands of times. He had maintained it in the harshest conditions. He trusted it, and it never failed him. Second, that discipline is invisible. Häyhä did not have a secret technique. He had patience. He could lie motionless in the snow for hours, waiting for the perfect shot. He could control his breathing, his heartbeat, his temperature. That discipline, that mastery of self, is harder than any physical skill. Third, that the environment is a weapon. Häyhä did not fight the cold. He used it. He used the snow for cover, the darkness for concealment, the temperature to his advantage. The Soviets fought against the environment. Häyhä fought with it. Fourth, that courage is not about being unafraid. Häyhä was afraid. Every sniper is afraid, but he did not let fear stop him. He did his job. He fired his rifle. He moved. He survived. Fifth, that the greatest heroes are often the quietest. Häyhä never sought fame. He never bragged about his kills. He returned to his farm and lived a normal life. He did not want to be the White Death. He wanted to be Simo Häyhä, farmer and hunter. But the war made him something else, and he accepted that role without complaint. He did his duty. He went home. That is the mark of a true warrior. Today, Simo Häyhä is a national hero in Finland. His name is taught in schools, his face appears on postage stamps, his rifle is displayed in the Military Museum of Helsinki. Statues of him stand in several Finnish towns. The house where he lived in Kollaa is now a museum. Every year, Finnish soldiers visit his grave to pay their respects. He is the subject of dozens of books, documentaries, and films. The most famous, The White Death, has been viewed millions of times on YouTube. He has become a meme, a legend, a symbol of Finnish sisu, a word that means stoic determination, grit, and courage in the face of impossible odds. But the man himself was not a meme. He was a human being. He had friends, family, and a quiet life. He killed over 500 men. That is not a statistic. That is a burden. We do not know how he carried it. He never said. He took the secret of his inner life to the grave. That is his final mystery. And perhaps that is why we are still fascinated by him. Because we want to know what it feels like to be the White Death. We want to know how a man can kill so many and still remain human. Häyhä never answered that question, but his life, his quiet, simple post-war life, may be the answer. He did not become a monster. He became a farmer. He did not lose himself. He found himself, he came home, he raised cattle, he hunted elk. He lived. That is the greatest victory of all. The Winter War ended in March 1940. Finland survived. The Soviet Union, humiliated, turned its attention to other fronts. And Simo Häyhä, the man who had done more than any other soldier to defend his country, went back to his farm. He did not complain about his injuries. He did not demand recognition. He simply lived. That is sisu. That is Finland. That is the White Death. The man who killed over 500 enemy soldiers with a rifle without a scope. The man who was shot in the face and survived. The man who never wanted to be a hero, but became one anyway. The man who taught the world that the most dangerous weapon is not a gun or a bomb. It is a human being who refuses to give up. Simo Häyhä, the White Death of the Winter War. Over 500 enemy soldiers, one man, one rifle, one will. That is not a myth, that is history. And that is a legend that will never ever freeze. Killa, Häyhä elää, the White Death lives. In memory, in legend. In every soldier who looks out across the snow and refuses to retreat, Simo Häyhä, sniper, farmer, hero. Rest in peace. Your war is over. Your legend has just begun.